Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Where we take a look at these markets, we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves just that one question: what happened today? What does it tell us about the coming days? I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's under the channel L.A. Little. If you want to subscribe, I highly recommend it. Anytime I push content, you're notified. It's an easy way to stay up with what's going on. Do a weekly show, do a morning show as well, a video. A lot of good material, easy for you to stay in touch with what's happening. And I think I do a pretty good job of calling these markets. It's been a traumatic week, 2 weeks or so, a lot of volatility. But we've been pretty much in lockstep with it. We stayed long right up until the time that it said to get short or said to get out, either one. We're able to do that. I rode this thing for 3 years. Never once did I say get out. It was only recently, we've only had like 3 or 4 calls where, there was a good chance of larger declines. The 3 prior to this one, they didn't happen. They set up, they never fulfilled, and until it actualizes, it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't matter, and when it does, it really matters, and it matters a lot. And so, hopefully you were able to stay on top of your game, and I was able to help you do that to some extent. As far as today, you started to go back down the other way, and we've got such large swings now that what looks to be not that large on a chart is fairly large in sets of numbers. I mean, if we look at the NDX, for example, 55 lower, the composite 51 lower, S&P's 17 lower, and when we flip over to look at a chart, it's not going to look like anything happened. Pretty much mixed everywhere else. I'm going to start with the one that gave us a signal today, and that's the Russell. Russell goes up, goes over, gets back under, less volume. That's a 2-bar reversal given the extent of the push. Now again, like I said, it doesn't look like that much, but we're talking 5%, 5 to 6% off the bottom. That's enough to give you a 2-bar. We'll see if it comes back and how it comes back. All of these charts, you're going to want to look at them to see how they come back into this area, right? Those 3 bars off the bottom in most of those charts. So that's where that's going to be the target on the way back. The first target is going to be the top of the high volume low in almost all cases. Once you get into it, you're magnetized down. That becomes these 2 bars in most cases, and then potentially all the way back down to the bottom. The S&P 500. If we look at the S&P, we got that doji on Friday, and that doji was a 2-bar, got over, back under, closed at 1988.87. The day before had a high of 89. So you go over, you get back under, you have less volume. That's a 2-bar. That says the next bar should be sideways to down. That's what it was. And again, it looks like not much here, but we're talking about 16, 16 points on the S&Ps today, almost 1%. Same thing. Here's the bars they're trying to come back into. As long as they get back into this big bar on the way down, this high volume low, if it does, right, the top is 1965, you're sitting at 72, so it looks to me like you'll test into it tomorrow. If you get into it, expect it to come into these bars next. NASDAQ. If we look at the NASDAQ, now the NASDAQ never gave us a reversal signal. The only thing the NASDAQ did was push, 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 and then reverse. Sometimes you don't get signals, sometimes you do. NASDAQ starts coming back. Again, 50 points off, looks like nothing even happened. The one that looked like it was going to give us a signal on Friday, but then they squeezed it right at the end, was the NDX. It closed Friday at 43.29, got over that previous high of 43.28.99, and just barely stayed over it, nullifying the 2-bar, but you nevertheless got the pullback anyway. All the pullbacks coming in on low volume to start with here. Again, the bars you want to look at, high volume low, and then the bars next to it. Now on the NASDAQ and the NDX, those bars are much higher. They're all conglomerated together. It tells me that this is going to be the area, the key area on the way back right off the bat on these stronger indexes. And I would suspect that area is going to give us some good information. So we'll have to watch that closely. Could get into it tomorrow. Now, if we go overseas, we're starting to see some of these markets already come off and come off pretty well. You know, here's the Taipei market. Now, this one just got decimated. High volume low, 7,200. It's already back to 8,200. So you've already got 1,000 points off the bottom in 5 days. We're talking about, 13, 14%. That's a pretty big bounce. That one is probably coming into an area now that it's going to have difficulty continuing up. If you pull over the weekly chart, right, you can start measuring some of these. Just to get back to the swing point low is 85. It's only at 82. So just as I said previously, in our markets, expect some sort of a pullback to attempt to put the ABCD structure in place in these markets now. And if in fact they do start to do that, right, then you're going to see our markets, of course, accelerate back to the downside. So let's assume, let's say, for example, we start seeing some pressure tonight. We got a lot of economic data overnight throughout the world, PMIs, first of the month, they come out every month. Those flash indexes, they're the most up-to-date view of what's happening. They're only about 3 weeks old when they come out. And so that sort of, data, this week is a lot of economics. And so that data this week is going to drive whatever the behavior is. We had the Jackson Hole, as I talked about last night. That indication there was that, the Fed floated a couple more ideas trying to, ease these markets along and say, we're not going to do anything to hurt you, but, we're going to have to raise the rates sooner or later. And we could be just as early as September still if the markets calm down. So, the ideal here that data is going to drive us this week, I don't think is far-fetched. I suspect that's probably going to be true, and how these markets view and respond to what happens on the data front will have a lot to do with how we play this week. Hang Seng got a bounce, came back real quick. If we look at the Shanghai also had a big bounce in front of all the celebrations going over there this week. And so it looks to be trying to come back up to do the retest, regen bearishly off that high. Moving over to Europe. So Europe was nice bounce going, got a gap up, comes back down, fills the gap today. I don't see anything special over here, really not much to talk about. Now, France was the one that actually got over this swing point high, right? And so if we look, swing point low, if we look at the top over there, that was 46.71.87. Today, you get back underneath it, close underneath it. So you stayed over at 1 bar. And, you can stay over something 1 bar doesn't mean a lot. But you're hanging up here still, long tails on these. If they get another push through tomorrow, then Europe might be telling us something. So we'll have to pay attention to it. Elsewhere, not a lot else taking place, just some rollover starting to take place. Moving over to the, let's see here, sectors. There were a couple signals in the sectors today, but again, not a lot. The one thing I did notice, and we talked about last week, is that we're seeing interest rate sensitive type areas get hit. Here's real estate rolling back over pretty good today. The utilities doing the same thing. We saw bonds doing the same thing. So, this is telling us that the market interpreted what the Fed said on Saturday from all the Fed heads that were gathered together there chirping about whatever they chirp about. It's saying, hey, that's not what we wanted. So markets, trading down, expecting rates to go up. So they're starting to price it in again. The two signals we got, the semiconductors, over under, 2 bar reversal, lighter volume. That looks to me like that one's going to try to come back. And related to that is technology itself. Technology gets to the high of Friday, gets back underneath it, has no volume. That one also looks to me like it's going to try to pull back. So when I look at tomorrow, I don't see anything overseas that makes me think different. And when I look at what I see here, looks to me like we're going to start pulling back some more as a result of what transpired today. So coming back to the, I want to come back to the S&P right quick here to wrap it up. if I look at the S&P, you know, the key areas is there's two, and I've pointed them out already, but this is what you need to watch. You need to watch this bar, top of it. You get into it, watch this little congruent area down here. You get under those, you can come all the way back to the bottom. That's it for tonight. Have yourself a great night. Thanks for joining me. Hey, tell a friend, folks. Tell two. Because I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Good night, folks.